Hello, and welcome to None of the Above. My name is Steve Nemerovski, and I'm your host. None of the Above is a political program where we are singularly focused on why the political system is dysfunctional and polarized, and on every show we try and talk about solutions. How are we going to fix this system? How are we going to make it work? For those of you that are regulars, you will know that today's show is right in my wheelhouse because I'm a major advocate of the fact that we need third parties to break this cycle of dysfunction. And in my third-party novel series, the third party I create is a centrist party. Now lately, I have actually been giving some thought to creating third party on the fringes, and we've talked about that a lot. But today, as I said, we're right in the wheelhouse because there's an exciting brand new political party that's been formed in Utah. And we're going to talk to the chairman today, Richard Davis, about how the party got started, thoughts on philosophy, elections, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a litmus test. This is, again, I'm just terribly excited about this. And we're going to welcome Richard Davis. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're the chairman of a brand new political party.
Yes, that's right, I am.
That doesn't happen every day.
No. In fact, we made that point to the press that it doesn't happen every day. It happens rarely. And therefore, it's a big deal. To have not just a new party. I mean, you have fringe parties that come up now and again, but to have a centrist party, that's unusual.
Well, I think that's terrific. As I said, in the lead-in, my write about this extensively. One thing a little different, though, in my book, which is fiction, my third party goes out of its way to find candidates and people to get involved who have not been Republicans or Democrats before. From what I've read about your party, you're bringing a whole host of Democrats on one side and Republicans on the other side and meeting in the middle.
That's right, because there's a lot of frustration on the part of not just independents, but also current Republicans and Democrats. In fact, you might be interested to know that just yesterday, a candidate for the chair of the state Democratic Party decided to drop out of the race and resign from the party. Because of his frustration with the Democratic Party. I mean, that just gives you an indication of the kind of frustration that is going on within the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party is similar. So the person who wants to run for Congress in the special election that's coming in, Jason Chaffetz is resigning effective the end of the month, and the candidate who wants to run on our ticket is Jim Bennett, who is the son of Bob Bennett, the late U.S. Senator from Utah, who was a very strong Republican. But Jim has left the Republican Party. So that's just a sort of a tip of the iceberg of the kind of frustration that's going on among the two parties in Utah.
And you and I are just meeting for the first time today, but obviously do research for the show. I think you yourself had some fairly strong credentials in the Democratic Party.
Yes, I was the chair of the county party where I live, which is a county of about 500,000 people. And so for 4 years, I did run candidates and attempt to help the Democratic Party. And my purpose was to help the Democratic Party become a more moderate, viable party. We ran candidates to do that, but actually the problem was that there was just so much pressure from the state party and the national party to be extreme, and we just didn't feel that worked in Utah. So our group, we were pushing the party to be more moderate, has basically left the Democratic Party.
So one of the things we talk about a lot on my show is this polarization, what we're calling these silos, where the Democrats are hanging out way over here and the Republicans are hanging out way over there. And it's as if they don't even talk to each other. And lo and behold, not only do we have a new party formed in Utah, but we have yourself and some other fairly prominent former Democrats, which is, you said, Jim Bennett, very prominent. How do you guys get together? Did you, were you in a car accident one day, or how?
Well, actually, I knew about him. I knew a bit of his history. He had managed his father's last campaign That was a very big news at the time because his father, we have a convention, caucus convention system in Utah, and we're moving a little bit towards a primary, but it's still very much controlled by the party caucuses and conventions. Bob Bennett had a 70% approval rating among Republicans in the state when he was rejected by the convention, the Republican convention, the delegates of the convention. And so Jim at that point actually started working for the Democratic candidate during the campaign, but he didn't become a Democrat because he couldn't see himself as a Democrat. So I knew about this and approached him and asked, are you interested in being part of a third party, a sort of middle party? And he jumped at it because this is what he had been thinking about as well, but it just had not taken any action on it. And the same is true as we've become more prominent in the news. Once we announced, and then Jim announced that he wanted to run for Congress. And by the way, we're going through a whole sorts of tussle with the state elections office right now. They would not allow him to file as a candidate of our party, even though we had gone through the legal requirements to become a party. They just have an administrative process of certifying that takes a couple of weeks, and it just the filing deadline happened before that ended, and so they said, well, we're not going to let him file. So once we get certified, and we understand that we will be certified today, that they're telling us they're going to finish the process today, and we can't imagine why that we've done anything that wouldn't certify us. We submitted 2,700 signatures, and they require 2,000. So we think we're in. Once that happens, we're going to go back to the elections office and say, let him file for this special election because we're now a certified party, and he wants to be our candidate. We'll see what happens. If they say no, and they probably will, then we're going to have to take legal action at that point to say, we're a legitimate party, and we ought to be able to have a candidate in a special election.
And I've been reading, you're up against some deadlines in that regard. You're like 10 days to get someone certified on a ballot for the congressional election?
Well, actually, it's passed. So we started to the certification process, a month or so ago. We anticipated that this special election was coming, but then when it was actually called, we had to accelerate our process of signature gathering in order to get it in with the possibility that we could get a candidate on the ballot. So we announced on a Monday. The filing deadline was a Friday. On Thursday, we submitted our signatures, and then on Friday, Jim attempted to file, and there was a tense moment there when he attempted to file, and they would not accept his filing. So now that we think we're going to be certified, we're going to try that process again. He has until Monday to file as an unaffiliated candidate, which is what he's going to do, assuming that they haven't decided to put him on as our candidate by Monday. We assume that's not going to happen. So he's going to be on the ballot in one way or another. But we want to take legal action if necessary to get him on the ballot as our candidate, because we feel like it basically infringes our ability to be able to run our own candidates, and the voters of Utah to be able to say, this is the party we wish to choose.
So is that kind of the moment that brought all this together, that you have a lot of people who are frustrated on both sides in Utah, maybe thinking about forming a party, and all of a sudden you see an opening because there's going to be a congressional seat, and it's like, well, now's the time. We're either doing it now or we're not doing it, kind of a thing?
No, it didn't work that way. Actually, we started this last year. We started the talk about doing this last fall, and then we sort of accelerated in the spring. So no, actually, this is not about the special election. What we did see, though, is the special election is an opportunity to run a candidate and to get out there and get attention to us and kind of get a big launch, because there was an election actually going on. We had intended not to not to have any kind of a election period until next year, when it would normally take place. So this was not about the special election. It just happened that the special election occurred as we were starting the process of forming.
So as I said, I'm so excited because this doesn't happen every day. And for my viewers and anyone else who might be thinking that the system's broken, how do I fix it? We should be starting a party. Can you give my viewers just an inkling of some of the thoughts that went into what it would take to create a party, and then some of the actual steps? You had to get 2,000 petitions signed, etc. What were some of your timelines, and what were some of your action points?
Well, Utah has a date of November 30th in order to form a new party. November 30th of a year before an election. So we really had until the end of November, and I think that's probably unconstitutional, that early a date, November 30th. But anyway, that's what we were facing, and we thought this is not going to be a problem, getting 2,000 signatures by November 30th. So there was that. As we were thinking about this a year in advance of November 30th, we were thinking, okay, how would we actually do this? What are the legal requirements first to do this? And then there's obviously more than this. How do we do this? So we actually started with a poll. We commissioned a poll that took place in November of last year, where we had over 500 Utah registered voters. We asked them questions about a third party. Do they want a third party? What kind of a party would that be? Should it be a more sort of fringe party, or would they like a moderate party? And the response was very positive. We had 51% who said that they felt like a third party was needed in the state. Only a third said that they were happy with the two-party system. We asked them what kind of party. 67% said that they wanted a moderate party. So this seemed to indicate to us that there was real support for us forming this kind of a party. And then we did more survey research. We did a couple of focus groups earlier this year, where we then sort of drilled down, okay, now, what would this party be like? In fact, even asked them, what kind of a name would this party, should this party have? What bothers you about the two-party system, and what would you like to see in a third party? So we had some data that we could lean on in order to form this party. And then we began to, there was an effort that started several years ago, in 2011, did not get off the ground. So we actually had the list of people who'd been involved in that effort, and went back to them and asked them, again, would you like to be involved? And some people didn't, but others did. We began to just sort of network. Would you be interested in doing this? Would you like to talk about this? It helped that we had a couple of major donors who were willing to invest early money in this. And they're still there. They're still with us. So we knew we needed public support. We knew we needed some kind of an organization. We knew we needed money. We knew we also needed a message. So we started to talk about platform. And our platform is on our website, unitedutah.org. We thought about, how do we make this different from the two parties? So one thing we did was to make a much shorter platform, and a platform that allows a lot more breadth in terms of participation in the party. Instead of the litmus test that parties are imposing on people, we said, let's set out some broad principles that we believe in, and there will be some things that'll be specific, but for the most part, we're gonna say these are broad principles that we would like policymakers to follow when they get in office, and we're not gonna tie your hands to specific things as much as we are to say, we want you to work together with other people. We want you to see this issue broadly in this way. The kind of solutions you come up with, you may have some tweaking difference, but that's okay. We also knew that for a lot of people were upset with the process, not just policy, but process. And so we have advocated process changes. For example, we are advocates of term limits. We are advocates of stronger campaign finance limits. We advocate an independent redistricting commission in the state. We don't have that right now. In fact, Utah has been known for terrible gerrymandering in order to keep the Republican majority in place. We are in favor of more nonpartisan elections. So just last year, the legislature made the state school board a partisan office. And I think they're going to do the same for local school boards if they had the chance. And we're saying, no, we don't approve that. And the Democrats, by the way, were not really opposed to this, because they knew that they would benefit in the areas where they have some kind of a majority. So we're the party that says, hey, no. In fact, why is the county commission office a partisan election? Why is the attorney general of the state a partisan election? Seems to me that just causes trouble. So we actually are process oriented as well, suggesting that we need to make reforms. So we came up with this platform, constitution, bylaws, all the things we need to do in order to show that we're a serious party.
So you're talking about we. At this point in time, who is we, and how do you actually design your platform? And let's go back to not content-wise, but process-wise. How do you decide who gets the vote? How do you decide how many votes you need to settle on a platform? So who's we, and let's talk about that process.
So we created an executive committee. These are people who were interested in participating and doing more than just, this is a nice idea, but actually taking action, being willing to do things. Now, this is a temporary executive committee. We have not, nobody's been elected yet. We're going to have a convention a week from Saturday where we will elect officers, and we will present the platform and present the Constitution and the bylaws. So then there will be an actual formal process. Although actually this is less, so there's two kinds of conventions that take place in Utah. One is a nominating convention, and the other is the organizing convention, and there are different years. So typically, when it's an election year, it's a nominating convention, and the whole goal of this is to nominate candidates to office. So this is really what we're doing, is nominating Jim Bennett to be our congressional candidate. But since we've not had an organizing convention before, we need to organize. And so we're going to be organizing in that way a constitution, bylaws, platform at that convention as well.
Now, I don't know if I would have predicted that Utah would be the state that would form a new party, because it's a pretty red state. And then there was all this excitement during the presidential election about the fact that Evan McMullin might win Utah, but then he didn't. So did his organizing help get you excited, but then did his defeat deflate you a little?
Well, no, and no. So we're not connected to Evan McMullin in any way. I don't know what he's doing. I don't think he even lives in Utah. He's trying to start a national movement, as I recall. So his bid, though, did send this message to us. It said that there are a lot of voters out there, Republican voters, who will defect, who were unhappy enough with the Republican Party candidate that they would vote for another candidate. I mean, Evan McMullin winning 21% of the vote, I mean, that's just unheard of for an independent candidate to win that much in a state. It just, I shouldn't say unheard of, but it's been a long time. Ross Perot did those sorts of numbers in 1992, but it's just unusual for that to happen. And it only happened in Utah, where he got those sorts of numbers. So it said to us, there's a lot of unhappiness with Donald Trump among Republicans, and those people were willing to defect. And I think that unhappiness with Donald Trump is still there on the part of a lot of Utahns. So yes, it did have the impact in the sense of we thought, oh, wow, they're 21%. out there willing to defect from the Republican Party. But the fact that he didn't win didn't indicate to us that it wasn't possible to pull this off. One thing I want to know, you asked, so it's a red state, reddest of states. So why would you start a new party? That's actually the reason to start it, because the Democratic Party is no longer competitive in Utah. It does not attempt to compete in elections. Last year, the gubernatorial candidate won 29% of the vote, and the Senate candidate won 27% of the vote. The congressional candidates did as poorly, with the exception of one person who tried to be very competitive, and he got 42%. They're just not competing. So in a sense, we don't see ourselves as a third party. We see ourselves as the second party, because the Democratic Party basically has abandoned the field. It has said, we're not really going to compete. We don't really care about trying to get the vote of Utah voters outside of a very small area. Salt Lake City, Park City, Utah, those areas are Democratic strongholds. But outside of that, Democrats don't try very hard. In fact, they often don't even run anybody, or if somebody runs, it's just a name on a ballot. So, I mean, the field is ripe. That's a lot of voters who may see themselves still as Democrats or Republicans would say, I'm going to vote for this party just because it provides an alternative that doesn't exist right now. That's what we're thinking will happen.
I like that answer, and I'm not sure you're going to play that up. You're not the third party, you're the second party. I like that. That's good.
Right.
So you've taken on a pretty big challenge here, because again, in my book, we start a little smaller. My party starts to get people elected at the state level. Probably a lot more doable, less costly, easier to organize. You're jumping right in at the congressional level. It's got to be very costly and require a major campaign. I know you said it kind of came upon you quickly. Do you think you can really be competitive?
Yeah, I think we can be competitive. Jim has good name recognition when people understand that his father, who his father was, and they liked Bob Bennett. And they did not like the way the Republicans treated him. So I think there's a lot of sort of residual goodwill towards Bob Bennett that Jim's going to take advantage of. We've gotten a lot of publicity. I mean, I think if people were to name who's running for Congress right now, Jim's name would get near the top of the list, because we've gotten so much publicity about what has happened with his attempting to file.
And it is a pretty crowded field. Is there an anointed Republican front runner, or not necessarily?
No, not really. I mean, I think there are a couple of people who have a chance and the others don't. But we think that this is probably going to be a low cost kind of campaign. But that's we don't want to expend all our resources clearly on this campaign. But we do know this is an opportunity to get our name out, to get some name recognition, to get publicity, and to make people aware of who we are and that we are out there. And we think that's going to help us in 2018.
Well, as always is the case, time flies, and I have so much fun having my interviews. I only have a couple minutes left for maybe one question or two, depending upon the answers. You mentioned this was originally going to be about 2018. So give me a little insight into what your 2018 plans would be. Are you running a full slate for governor, et cetera, et cetera? And then make sure my viewers know how to find you and get active if they're interested.
Sure. So we have no statewide races in 2018 in Utah, except for a Senate race. So we actually have an advantage in the sense we're not going to have to run governor, lieutenant governor, blah 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 next year, and that helps us out. So Senate race, I anticipate we will have somebody. Congressional races, yes. But we're really going to focus on some state legislative races. And I can't see us being competitive in every single one. There are 104. But I could see that we could target some and try to win in those areas. So, yeah, our hope is to get a caucus in the state legislature by 2019 that begins to grow and be significant. If you're interested, unitedutah.org. That's where you can find out more information about us.
And at the current time, you're taking Republicans, Democrats, all comers, right?
Yes, anybody.
Well, Richard, this is very exciting, and I hope to kind of follow you maybe through your growth here, because, as I said, it's a bit of a litmus test for me. We haven't had what I think to be a potentially significant third party created in our country in a while. You are taking on some challenges in Utah, but I think you've got the building blocks, so to speak, for a really exciting effort, so I congratulate you.
Yeah, and by the way, we're very excited about the fact that in France, the centrist candidate won.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Times are changing.
Yep, yep.
Well,
Good to
Richard,
talk to you.
thank you very much, and hopefully we'll be able to maybe visit in the fall and see how you guys are doing towards getting ready for the fall election.
Take care.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, as I said earlier, that's totally in my wheelhouse. I'm all about third parties, and this follows a pattern from my book as well. We've got a centrist third party here. And as you can tell from Utah, it's a bit different because, as he said, they're not the third party, they're the second party, but they're trying to become centrist. And I think the dialogue in our country and where we're headed is going to require this type of centrist activity. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. As always, our goal is to entertain and our goal is to educate. I think one of the things I wanted to accomplish today was this educational notion that if any of you are out there and you're thinking about, can we form a third party, where can we go, you can see what the building blocks look like here. You got to have a core group of individuals that want to get this party started. As Richard mentioned, you've got to have some financing. You can never ignore the financing part of this. I know I talk a lot about the fact that the internet creates so much energy that you don't need as much money as you used to. You still will need some money, so maybe finding some major donors that are willing to step up. You got to find some good candidates, and they've clearly found what appears to be a great candidate coming right out of the blocks here. Where I differ from them is I think a third party getting started should not necessarily be leaning on pre-existing Democrats or Republicans, but I think the dynamic in Utah lends itself to getting there. So a lot of exciting things happening in Utah. Utah United, follow them. I'm certainly going to follow them, and we'll pick them up on future shows. If you're interested in catching up on any of our past work, you can find us at grassrootstv.org. We have all our prior shows in total, the complete shows, at grassrootstv.org. And then we've got segments, so you can pick out an interview you might like to follow at noneoftheabove.tv. So you've got grassrootstv.org and noneoftheabove.tv. Remember, if you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem.